We now move to topical questions. Question number 1, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to ensure that NHS-Boards do not manipulate waiting time figures in order to meet targets.
Cabinet Secretary Alex Neil.
Presiding Officer, to ensure that all NHS boards are fully applying with waiting time guidance, the Scottish Government instructed all NHS boards earlier this year to undertake an extensive internal audit of their waiting time practices. We expect these audits to be completed and published by the end of the year.
Murdo Fraser.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? Yesterday we learned that 2 top executives in NHS Tayside had been suspended following the Audit Scotland investigation the Minister referred to into discrepancies over waiting time figures. And this follows on allegations that there have been behaviour within Grampian Health Board to massage the waiting lists, and of course the fiasco earlier this year in NHS Lothian. Will the Cabinet Secretary now accept there is an endemic problem with manipulation of data within NHS boards across Scotland, and can he tell us what urgent steps he has taken to sort out this situation?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, to date, only 2 boards out of 14 have identified problems, namely Lothian and Tayside. However, I will wait until I receive all 14 audit reports from the 14 health boards before rushing to judgment. I obviously, for obvious reasons, cannot comment in detail in terms of the 2 suspensions which Mr Fraser referred to in NHS Tayside. Apart from anything else, I am not the employer. The Health Board is the employer.
Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would think most reasonable people would think 2 out of 14 to date is a pretty serious failure rate from NHS boards. And of course, we've had cause to question the SNP government's figures on other areas and found them wanting. Now we're wondering if we can trust their NHS waiting times and waiting list figures. Given the seriousness of the situation, will the Cabinet Secretary request time for an urgent statement to Parliament so we can have this matter fully discussed and debated?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am quite happy to report back to Parliament once all the facts are clear, and they will be available when these audit reports are published by the end of the year. And, of course, I emphasise they are going to be published. Everything will be in the public domain. So if there are problems in any other health boards, apart from Lothian and possibly Tayside, then these will come to light with the publication of these audit reports. We are being totally transparent in this issue, and I think once people have the facts, that is the time to make a judgment, not beforehand.
Jackie Bailey.
It would appear that the waiting time scandal is indeed not simply confined to NHS Lothian, but reports of figures being fiddled, not just in Tayside, but also in Grampian. I welcome the publication of the reports in December. I hope it's not just before Christmas. The presiding officer will, of course, herself recall when Nicola Sturgeon said to her party conference that all patients are now covered by the waiting time guarantee. Was she wrong?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, not at all. We've made it absolutely clear we're making substantial progress on waiting times in a whole range of areas in terms of the targets. And unlike the previous administration, we actually measure these things and we don't have an institutional fiddle like the hidden waiting times that were prominent during the time that Jackie Bailey's administration was in charge of the National Health Service. Unlike the previous administration, we have nothing to hide. We will publish all these audit reports and any judgment can be made, indeed, if there is a scandal beyond Lothian or possibly Tayside. In relation to Grampian, these are merely allegations that have appeared in one newspaper that I've read and so far have not been substantiated.
Kim Hume.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary should be aware that tucked away amidst the mass of health statistics released by ISD Scotland last week was the news that, compared against the same point last year, 5,809 additional patients are awaiting a key diagnostic test from the NHS and a doubling of the percentage of patients having to wait over 4 weeks. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that an increase in these figures is unacceptable, and can he explain why almost 6,000 extra people are currently waiting for a key diagnostic test on the NHS?
Presiding officer, I think the member got some of the figures mixed up there, but can I say that where we are not achieving particular targets, action plans are in place to make sure that we do. We have very ambitious targets in terms of waiting times, and clearly, given that there are 5 million hospital consultations in Scotland every year, then it is inevitable that from time to time something may well go wrong. Where there are any systemic problems, we will deal with them along with our health boards. And as I say, we are achieving far, far more either than was achieved under the previous Labour Liberal administration, and we're certainly achieving far, far more than the Tory Liberal coalition in London.
Question number 2, Lewis MacDonald.
To ask the Scottish Government how many people appeared in court without legal representation on the 3rd of December as a result of protest action by defence solicitors in Aberdeen, Forfar, Arbroath, Dundee, Perth, Alloa, Falkirk and Dunfermline.
Cabinet Secretary Kenny McCaskill.
The total number of people who appeared in custody courts without legal representation on 3rd December in Aberdeen, Arbroath, Dundee, Perth, Alloa, Falkirk and Dunfermline, while defence solicitors were protesting, is 17. There was no strike action at Forfar, but there was in Kirkcaldy, where 16 people appeared unrepresented, bringing the total to 33. Normally, it would only be in exceptional circumstances that those appearing from custody would appear without a solicitor in attendance. But I should make it clear that nobody needed to appear without legal representation due to defence solicitor protests. Duty solicitors were available on all these dates, as they would usually be, to ensure access to justice was maintained. Some clients have, however, been appearing in court unrepresented, even though they seem to have had prior conversations with a defence solicitor.
Lewis MacDonald.
I'm grateful the impact of this action clearly went beyond those who appeared in court. Can the Cabinet Secretary tell us how many people held in cells over the weekend were liberated on Monday morning without having appeared in court? And can he also tell us how many police forces instructed officers to consider discretion and other available disposals to avoid detaining people who might otherwise have been detained in preparation for possible action of this kind?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, these are operational matters for the police. Mr MacDonald would require to approach the Chief Constable. I cannot possibly provide that information as it's not routinely put into government.
Lewis MacDonald.
I'm surprised Mr McCaskill is not interested in the issue of liberations on Monday morning of people held over the weekend, and that no inquiries have been made by him of those matters. However, that aside, I am encouraged to note that he is due to meet with the Law Society and other representatives of the legal profession tomorrow. Can I ask him if he will approach that meeting with a fresh offer and with a view to resolving this dispute? Will he, for example, in line with the question I asked the First Minister 2 weeks ago, will he consider the Scottish Legal Aid Board offering to collect all contributions and to charge the legal profession for providing that service?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as I've said before, I met with the legal profession and the Law Society on the 20th of November. I discussed with the Law Society, who wished to return and have further meetings, and thought it would be helpful if I could meet directly with members of the Bar Association. I will be meeting tomorrow with both the Bar Association representatives and indeed with the Law Society. But we have put two matters to the Law Society of Scotland. The first is a willingness to consider an increase in the threshold set for the disposable income. That is a matter that the profession seem to have majored on. I accept that, and I'm willing to increase the threshold from £68 to £82, but it will require to be met from within the existing budget, which would meet fees. That is currently with the Law Society, and I await their response. With regard to the question relating to collection, I believe that it is fundamental that this matter, which are, after all, fees, should be dealt with by the solicitor. They're the ones who interact and interface with the agent. It's what they do when they collect private fees. It's what they do when they deal with ABWAR. It's what civil agents do, and we are seeking to get parity there. I have, though, made an offer, quite clearly an offer, that the Scottish Legal Aid Board would be willing to seek to recover from those who have not made payment, but it would have to be on a commercial basis. I think that's a matter that would apply to any other business, large or small, in Scotland.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how long the strike action is likely to last, please?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, that's a matter I can't really advise upon. It would be for those who are taking part in the action to give us that indicating. I do think it's rather regrettable that very little intimation has been given. This has caused considerable inconvenience, not simply for clients who are unrepresented, but also to Crown, to the Scottish Court Service, and indeed to sheriffs who are required to preside. So it will be a matter that I will be making clear to the Law Society. People are entitled to take action. The legal profession are equally entitled to take action, but normally people usually give some intimation of the proposed action so that people can take appropriate steps. But that's a matter I will discuss with the Law Society, because after all, I think it's also a matter of note that the action taken to date has been restricted to action that will not